least make it work, in a way that it will be in line or connected, the court connected ADR with the one dealing with litigation. So we cannot leave ADR. ADR did not come to, absorb the whole thing, of the law. No. Litigation is there and it will ever continue. We know it because ADR does not deal here with criminal matters. So people actually will absolutely enjoy a great lot if we look into the area of access to justice by using ADR. There are some people who cannot afford to pay lawyers. So for these people, they could go through ADR. Some of those cases, they don't need to be going to spend time in the law courts.
This is the interview, and my guest is Dr. Ibrahim Lowe. Didn't tell you that at the moment he is acting dean of the Arts and Science Faculty, University of the Gambia. Doctor, we will concentrate more on alternative dispute resolution. I remembered when you opened the secretariat there, I was the master of ceremony on that day. The president was invited. He couldn't come, but delegated the vice president. Alternative dispute resolution, we have said, it's an African thing. I mean, normally when disputes arise in the neighborhood, the elders will wait until after the Maghreb prayers. And tell us more about this African way of resolving disputes before the court system came in.
Yes, we were having chiefs before the colonial masters. The chiefs, you call them kings or you call them chiefs, but they were there. They were either, it could go through inheritance, or if not, it could, people could identify them to be, become chiefs. So they had people who were their advisors. That's the committee of elders, not council of elders as they say, committee of elders. But then they have youth groups, and then at the same time, some of those people who were in the committees, they were matured enough in different areas, so they advised some of these chiefs. If at all a dispute arises, what they will do, if it is inheritance, they will call the stakeholders and then actually call the people who are very much au fait of either what the Quran says, or if it is they are Christian, they will invite our own Christian members to know how best they could in fact settle this sort of a dispute. Which means that if at all even that they made mistakes, the committee of elders could tell them, oh no, you will have to at least go A, B, C, D way. The committee of elders, they were not just committees of elders as such, but they were umpires. Umpires in the sense that if you go through arbitration, you have an arbitration case where they will inter-exchange a document. I mean, the complainant and the respondent, they inter-exchange documents, give it to the arbitrator. The arbitrator cannot work himself alone unless and until he is being advised by an umpire. So the committee of elders, they were umpires, and at the same time, they were balancing most of the, let's say, problems that could in fact come out between the respondent and the complainant.
The decongestion of courts was what gave rise to the establishment of the Alternative Dispute Resolution Secretariat. How helpful to the court system has been ADR?
Yes, absolutely. We must be very frank in that aspect. Before I left office in January, we were able to at least conquer 475 cases dealt with. Even though if it were 1 or 2, 3 cases, we have decongested the courts, and not to mention 400 and something cases dealt with. And candidly speaking, people, particularly in the rural areas, are benefiting a great lot in the in having to establish, when we establish these ADR centers, like one in Farafenye and the other one in Basse. As I know, Malik, you are a mediator, and you contributed a great lot when we in fact had cases. We invited you to be there, and then you were able to deal with some of those cases. So in absolute fact, we must look at it through that perspective, that we have not only decongested the courts, but two, the animosity between people have been killed, and then at the same time, time factor, which is very important, which takes, ADR does not take too much time in having a solution. And the time factor too is there. It helps a great lot. We don't waste people's time. You go there, you explain, we call the complainant, defendant, and get witnesses, see the evidences that are there that avails, and then we'll be able to settle.
And of course, the fear of being in a courtroom with the press here, I mean, people don't like the court system. I mean, to go into court, the macabre atmosphere you find in the courts. In ADR, it is rather very private.
I am very glad you point out this. People like, there are, aspects of confidentiality. And ADR is nothing but confidentiality. You are there with the complainant and the defendant. At most, if you call perhaps one or two witnesses, it would be. But in litigation, it is a different thing. Litigation, actually, the courtroom is filled with curious lookers and people who wanted to know about what is happening about in ABCD case. And well, you have more confidentiality in a nutshell in the ADR than through the litigation in the courtroom. But the people who are called at the ADR to express themselves, one, the language is there, they can explain themselves in their own language, and two, even though if it is English, they can explain themselves in that very language. Whereas if you are in the courtroom, you have lots of people, you have the press, and people they want to know, and people want to make use of, let's say, what the results of the court is going to produce. So sometimes people become a bit jittery and having to deal, go through the courts of law than even coming to the ADR. And that's why most of them opt for ADR.
No system has its buts. I mean, no matter what you do in life, I mean, there must be a but here. What have been the main challenges of the Alternative Dispute Resolution Secretariat?
Okay, in ADR, one thing is, if you are a trained mediator, that you know, Malik, there is first and foremost, when you are dealing with mediation or even conciliation, first what you have to do, take into account, is the ground rules, so that both parties will not end up in blows. You will have to tell them that, well, there's no insulting, there's no, fighting, there's nothing here. And then, well, normally you have even government gives you a police officer to a security officer to come and check what is happening. So, the people, once you tell them that the ground rules says A, B, C, D, now the comportment of people becomes different. Now the problem can happen too from the mediator, that if the mediator is trying to be partial, if you are impartial, you find no problem. But once you are being partial, the parties themselves, they will notice that you are taking sides. So that can bring, much more complication. Absolutely.
Stuff like that, yeah.
Yes, because you will not be able to give them sense of belonging. And then you will not be able to give them not only the ground rules. The rules, they will not be confidential at all. They will not be credible at all. And at the same time, if you are to get to the different stages of mediation, by showing impartiality, giving them sense of belonging, and at the same time